Hello, my name is Carrie and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be doing a tag video. This is the C tag and I think it's very fitting because my name starts with C. I was tagged to do this by an oasis of books and I was really excited because the questions are a mix of reading questions. Some are about cooking, and that is something that I am really passionate about. And a lot of the genres are related to books that I enjoy reading already. So I think that this will be a really fun tag to respond to. There are 8 questions to this, although I have changed the 8th question, and I'll talk a little bit more about why and what I changed it to when we get there. So question 1 is C is for countries: Cuba, Colombia, Chile, Congo, Cyprus, Czechia, China, and Canada. What was the last book that you read by an author from a country beginning with C, or a book set in a country beginning with C? For this one, I think the last book that I read was A Rip Through Time by Kelly Armstrong. I actually didn't know that Kelly Armstrong was a Canadian author until I started reading this book, and it was set in Canada very briefly because the main character is from Canada originally, although in the book she is visiting Scotland to spend time with her grandmother, who is not doing well health-wise. But I had no idea that Kelly Armstrong was from Canada because I feel like when I was growing up, her books were very popular in the United States, so I never realized that she was not an American author. And even in reading this book, I wouldn't have realized that until looking it up after the fact. I really enjoyed this one though. This is the first book in a murder mystery series. We are following a detective who in the present day is visiting her grandmother, like I said, and she goes on a run and ends up being attacked and sent back in time 150 years because a woman in the past was also being attacked in this same spot. From there, she is in the body of this woman and she is living her life, and yet she's trying to figure out what exactly happened and how can she get back to her normal life. It was a really interesting read. I thought the time travel aspect would be really weird, but I actually think it was very interesting how it was explored in this book. And I really loved the main character. She's a very strong main character, and I found that she was very quick-witted and also very realistic of someone, I guess you could say, who would be in these circumstances, although of course they're fantastical circumstances. However, the way she approaches her investigation and her interactions with characters and the way that she is trying. However, I think specifically the way that she approaches her investigation, her interactions with other characters and trying to gather information, but also realizing that the person she has inhabited is really not a great person. And what that means when you're in a situation like that was really interesting to follow along with. The second prompt is C is for classic. What was the last classic book that you read? This is difficult because I haven't read a lot of classics this year. I recently read one back in August, like the beginning of August, and that was Men in the Sun and Other Palestinian Stories by Ghassan Kanafani, and this was translated from the Arabic by Hilary Kilpatrick. This is a collection of short stories, so it's not actually a novel, but they are all about Palestinians who are in diaspora after the Nakba. There's not exact years given, but you can kind of understand from context clues when certain events are happening in this timeline of stories. And it was a really good collection. I think this has been one of the standout translations from Arabic that I've read. I often have difficulties with books that are translated from Arabic because the language is usually much more disjointed when it's being translated into English because it's hard to translate it word for word. However, I think Hilary Kilpatrick's translation, although it may not express the original Arabic in its exact form, I think it made a lot of sense in how it was conveyed to the reader. And I'm hoping to read more classics this year. I realized that the past couple of years I really haven't read a lot of classics, so I'm hoping this is something that I could maybe change because I definitely want to read more. I think that some classics are classics for a reason, and so they deserve to be well loved and well read. Prompt 3 is C is for children's book. What was the last children's book you read for your own enjoyment? I don't know if this really counts because this is a little bit more middle grade than children's, but I guess I could say the last book in the Percy Jackson series. I finally finished that a couple weeks ago, and I really enjoyed it. I really like that series. I think it's really fun, and I really like how it approaches telling Greek myths because I am someone who is really not familiar with a lot of the Greek myths, and I like the way that it's incorporated into the stories in a way that's accessible for different people. If I had to say more specifically a children's book that is for much younger readers, I would say Ancestor Approved Intertribal Stories for Kids. This is an anthology that was edited by Cynthia Leitich Smith, and it is a collection of stories from different Indigenous authors set around this powwow that is happening in Michigan and involves communities from all across North America. This is just such a joyful collection. I think it not only teaches the reader so much, but also is a really beautiful exploration of this event and its importance to different people from different communities. I really had such a great time with that one. And I often seek out children's books for, sometimes a break between heavier reads. And this one was kind of serving that purpose, but yet I often find it so fascinating how in books like this, I think of The Ogress and the Orphans as another example. There are really complex and difficult subjects to read about, but yet they're approached in a very nuanced way that I think would shock a lot of older readers in how much they would actually enjoy reading these types of stories because, they're just really amazing reads. And I wish more people would kind of free themselves of their literary pretentiousness and go back and read more children's books over their life. Prompt number 4 is C is for cookbook. Do you have a favorite? I love cooking, although I don't necessarily stick to one cookbook. I do have a couple that I would consider books that I keep going back to and really enjoy. One of my absolute favorites that I think is really accessible for everyone and has recipes that are much more practical than many cookbooks is Sola's Start Here. I love Sola. I have followed her career for many, many years now, and I really trust her and her cooking, not only because I think that she does a very good job of breaking down recipes and explaining different parts to people, but also because I find that she strikes a good balance of interesting recipes that maybe challenge you in terms of flavors and pairing things together, but also recipes that anyone would be interested in and would find a common usage for. So that is one of my favorites. I would also say Claire Saffit's What's for Dessert, which was her second book. I know many people recommend her first book. I actually enjoy her second book more because I find that those are great recipes for special occasions. And I often am making cookies or cakes for a special occasion. I don't make a lot just for myself. So I enjoy a book like that because I find that it serves a specific function for something that comes up pretty frequently in life. And I think I've made the most recipes from the cookbooks that I own from that book because I usually pick a few that I do throughout the year. So I have tried a good variety of the recipes from there. My favorite one is her all-in shortbread cookies. I have experimented with that in so many different forms, and it is really just an amazing base recipe for if you want to try something new and interesting, but then also add your own specific favorite like flavors or mixings in that one. Last but not least, because I struggle to pick a favorite when it comes to cookbooks, the Love and Lemons, I think it's like A to Z vegetables. I can't remember the exact title, so I'll insert a picture here. This is one that I really love because I feel like when I was first learning how to cook, I really didn't understand the importance of having a variety of foods and how to pair specific vegetables with different dishes. And then even when I learned those basics, I struggled to find a way to adapt certain foods to recipes flavor-wise, or maybe there was a protein that I wanted to make and I couldn't figure out, okay, well, what would really go with this? I found this book to be amazing and giving so many different ideas for using everyday fruits and vegetables in unique ways that taste great and that also could be applied to so many different varieties of cuisines and just meals that you want to make through the week. And I think that this one, again, is one that's better for people that are starting out, but also still has interesting recipes for people who are looking for something a little bit more complicated. Prompt number 5 is C is for comfort zone. What genres fall into your reading comfort zone? For me, literary fiction and poetry are definitely my comfort genres. I think that I have read so many iterations of these books that I very easily know what am I going to enjoy, what is important for me in these types of books. and what are things that are going to be a harder sell for me. Those are the ones I find that I am the most critical of, but I also think that they are the genres with maybe the most to say in terms of societal, cultural, political reflections. So I'm naturally more critical of those books. However, I'm someone that likes to read outside of my comfort zone. I really prioritize trying to read from a variety of genres, even if they're genres that make me uncomfortable. Like, for example, the horror genre and thriller. I am a scaredy cat. I am definitely someone that struggles with those types of books, but yet I have found books that I have really enjoyed within those genres that if I had been too uncomfortable to read them or not given them a chance, I never would have discovered something that actually was really interesting to me. Next, number 6 is C is for characters you can't forget. What fictional characters live rent-free in your head? I have to say Vera Wong from the Vera Wong Mystery series by Jessie Q. Sutanto. I love her as a main character. I would also say Mosscap from Monk and Robot by Becky Chambers. That's the name of the series. The first book is A Psalm for the Wild Built, I think. Mosscap was just such an innocent character, and I loved seeing the world through their eyes and their new understandings and perceptions of the world around them. It was just really lovely. And although Vera Wong and Mosscap have been from older reads, there's one that I've read more recently that I think about pretty often since finishing it, and that is Mali from The Seven Moons of Mali Almeida. This is a book that I really, really enjoyed, and Mali is a character that has really stuck with me since reading it. He is just such a complex character, and there's so much to his growth as a person through that book, and then also this experience with him in the afterlife, this interrogation of his character that I just really loved. And there have been a lot of moments recently that I've thought a lot about Mali, and so yeah, I think I have to say him for this, even though I haven't read the book that long ago. Number 7 is C is for crime. What is the last crime novel that you read? And for this, I actually read a nonfiction, and that would be Killers of the Flower Moon by, I think it's David Bran or David Gran, I can't remember. And I really don't care to, because I actually really did not enjoy this one that much. I think that this book was trying to do way too much. The first section is about the original murders that happen in this community. The second section is about the investigation, and then it turns into almost a weird, half-hearted microhistory of the FBI, although that's a very small part of this story. I really don't think that it is even accurate to say that it is a history of the FBI. And then the final section is the author inserting himself into the narrative because it's about his journalistic exploration of this story and the people that he came into contact with to make this story happen. And I just, at a certain point, didn't care about the sheer scope of the information that was in this. There's way too much that is trying to be explained here. These different sections, I don't feel like added to the story anything except complicating the narrative, because the reality is the heart of this story really could have just been explained in that first section. I don't feel like the additional sections gave that much context to anything that we really needed more exploration of in the story. I found parts of the investigation interesting, but also the investigation was so drawn out because the first half of that chapter is re-exploring everything we already learned in the first part. And I really also became very irritated with the style of writing in this book, because it's very obvious to me that this author thinks that they are one of the best authors and the most fascinating people in the world. And I didn't agree with that. I did not find the writing in this to be very exceptional. I found the storytelling to be bogged down. This one ultimately was a pretty big disappointment for me. I usually don't read nonfiction when I am reading about crimes, so maybe this is a sign that this genre specifically is not my cup of tea when it comes to crime. The last prompt is originally C is for ChatGPT and Claude AI. Ask ChatGPT or another AI to choose a book for you. I don't really have an interest in this, so I am going to change this. I am going to give a recommendation for a book that I have read with C in the title, a book that is currently on my shelves that has C and I'm hoping to read, and a book that has yet to release that also starts with C that I want to read in the future. First, I'm going to talk about the book that I have already read that I would recommend that starts with a C. And I went back through all the books that I've read that I would consider favorites, because I think if I'm recommending it, it should be a book that I really enjoyed. And I found out through this process that I have not read a lot of books with the letter C. I have never actually looked at my books and the alphabetical variety that the books I finished have fallen into, but this was pretty interesting to me to see the differences in certain letters. C was pretty low, I can't lie. I would say the one that I would recommend the most from this list is probably The Color Purple by Alice Walker, but this is a classic. I think everyone has really read this. There is a series that all start with C, and that is the Infernal Devices series by Cassandra Clare, Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, and Clockwork Princess. I really loved this series, but it has been over a decade since I have read these books. I don't know if they hold up to the hype, but I really enjoyed them when I read them. I gave all 3 of the books 5 stars. So I was really, really into these books. And I think that I would actually recommend those because I think that those are books that even now I still have very strong feelings about. I remember certain scenes from that series. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the Infernal Devices trilogy because they all start with C and they were really lovely. Next, in terms of a book that is on my shelves unread that I am hoping to read soon that starts with C, I have to say Celestial Bodies by Joka Al-Harati. And this is translated from the Arabic by Marilyn Booth. This is the story of a group of women in Oman, and it's just kind of following their lives there. I have heard pretty good things about this from people that have read it, but when I look at the reviews are very low for this, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's a translation issue, I don't know if it's the story itself, or if there are other things that people just didn't enjoy about this, but it's one I keep going back and forth on. This is now the 3rd or 4th year that I've had this on my shelves, and I keep telling myself I will read it during Women in Translation Month, and that is obviously not happening this year because August is over, so I need to figure out when will I actually read it. If you read it and you enjoyed it, let me know. If you read it and you didn't enjoy it, don't let me know because that will make me even more indecisive. Last but not least, I am going to talk about a book that is releasing in the future that I am hoping I will enjoy. For this one, I'm choosing Cleopatra by Sara El Arifi, and this is the author of the Final Strife series, I think. I am really intrigued by this because this is apparently starting at the moment that Cleopatra discovers that her father has died and that she is Pharaoh. That is the only information we have gotten about this book. It is not a very long book. From the estimates that I'm seeing so far, it's about 380 pages, and that doesn't seem like enough time or space to dedicate to Cleopatra. I don't know that a book about Cleopatra will ever really do justice to her story, or, you know, if it will ever really give this like new interesting take that people are often hoping for. But I find Cleopatra very fascinating, and I'm really intrigued as to how Sara will, you know, explore this narrative and this very famous historical figure in a book that I think will set so many people's expectations so very high. It doesn't come out until 2026. I think the late winter, early spring, depending on if the dates remain the same. But yeah, I'm really, really hoping that that will be a good one because I'm pretty excited for it. So that concludes the C tag for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. I would love to hear your answers to these questions, either in a video of your own or in the comments down below. And happy reading. Bye.